And then I'm gonna start talking for a minute. So how can I hide that ribbon? Anybody got an idea? I guess it doesn't really matter, does it? Yeah, I'm not gonna worry about it. F. I don't know. Okay, so we're going to talk about business planning, and I want to do it a little slower and a little different than we did last year, because the real goal of your business planning is to figure out what you can do every day to earn business. Does that make sense to everybody? Anyone have a question about that? Let me say it again. The real goal of business planning is to figure out every day what you can do to earn business. Now then, there's a whole lot of metrics you can put in here. Some of them are important metrics. Some of them are less important. Some of them depends like how you do things. For example, the first thing on our spreadsheet, the first little tab down at the bottom says budget. I'm going to take this, put it at the top. Not that far. And it says budget because that's where they think you ought to start when you're working on things. Now, let me be clear. You ought to know what your business expenses are. But if you don't want to know, I don't care. What I would say is for Greggy, I would probably put my business expenses in that I know about. And I wouldn't worry about my personal expenses because I take care of those at home, or I've got QuickBooks Online or whatever. But if you want to get so deep into this that you plan every penny you're going to spend from here till next year, you could do that. But for Greg, I would probably say, I'm going to put in what I know. So every quarter, I got to put in $146 for the MLS. Now, when I'm filling this sheet out, I can put 146 at every quarter, and it's going to calculate for me the total amount. Or I can come over here and say, I know my annual dues are $600 and type it in there, and I'm done. But I kind of like being able to put, especially things that are recurring up here. Now, I know that in October of next year, we have our annual dues coming in. So I'm going to put, $700, even though I know it's not that much. And I'm not going to be training $500 every other month. I'm going to take some of this stuff out. But I might leave in a class in May and a class in July just so I can pad it a little bit. And then I'm going to take out the class in September. And you see, when I take out those numbers, it changes the numbers over here. So I already had actually my individual dues up here. Oh, I don't need the 700 here. So I'm going to erase it. And you'll see over here, it goes down to 1,000. So the thought process is when you're building your business expenses, do you want to put in, I've got an annual contract with Zillow for $6,000. Do I want to come over here and type in $6,000? Or do I want to put in every month, I'm going to pay Zillow $500? So let's go down to the next section. Signage, print advertising, print flyers, online ads. And let's say and then we get to farm community and I say, wow, no place in here do I see anything from my Zillow stuff. Well, just change whatever you do. I'm going to say that I don't do any online ads. So I'm going to click on the box. You see it populates up here, and I'm going to put in Zillow. leads. So you can make this what you want it to be, right? Everybody get that?
You can't add a row?
Huh?
Can you add a row?
I've never tried. The point I'm going to make is I'm not going to add a row now because I don't know what it could mess up. The answer is yes, but sometimes when you have merged fields and stuff, it doesn't. I would rather you rename something that you already know. So like professional services. Well, I've got various things in here that are pre-filled out on the stuff you have. But let's say every month you put in $500 for Zillow leads. I can go across here and put in $500 a month, or I can come over here to the end. Let's see, which one was that? That was row 10. So row 10 here, and I can put in $6,000. And now I'm done, okay? The only thing that's going to be weird is because I wrote the $6,000 in here, it erased the formula that would have added up all those columns. So you can't go back now and start adding things in here and expect it to populate here. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
So how do you get the $6,000 out so that the formula repopulates?
I could go back to my undo button and undo and see that already said 1,500. Now I know how to make it. I can go auto sum, and that's going to be R7 to R9. No, I don't want that. I want rows. I want these rows. And see how when I highlight them, it goes back and does that. So now that's what the sum's going to be there, and I can just push enter and it's done. But I don't want to get too deep into that because hopefully I'm going to go 500, 500, 500, 100, 500, 500, 500, 500. And let's say after September, I don't do it anymore. Well, then over here, I've got $4,000. The idea of this is if you know what your business expenses are, you'll find that it will help you understanding what you're really making and what you're not making. So, and I'm going to tell you, this is not meant to be a really precise, I've got everything down budget. This is a general, what do I need to do every day to get enough business to pay for this at the end of the year? So I don't have, I do have a phone. Now, I don't know what you guys spend on your phones these days because I have a company account. You spend $80, $100? What do you spend?
Yeah, 87.
87? Okay, I'm just going to make it 90 a month to round up.
Yes.
Ouch.
And I'm going to show you a trick too, just because we're playing with this. If I've got $90 in here and I highlight that, see that little tiny square there? I can take it and go all the way over, and it's supposed to make them all $90. So I don't have to type it into every box. And now at the end, I know at the end of the year, I'm going to spend $1,080 for whatever for that. Now that 400 is written in there, and I showed you how to fix it, but I'm just going to get rid of it because I don't do that. And for entertainment, I have 3,500, and I'm just going to leave it in there because, you know, I probably spend that somewhere. Professional services. Well, the reason professional services is in there is a lot of people will spend that on photography or spend that on, oh, you might pay for an inspector or. Pay another agent to put an open house. So I'm going to leave that in there just because I want it. But notice I don't break it out every month. It's just in that 1 month. And then I can say, well, what do I pay the government? Quarterly taxes. And let's say, I don't know what quarterlies are. 500, 1,000. More?
What I do with mine, because I have an LLC, but for my personal taxes, so I email my accountant every quarter and say, okay, here's what my income is for this quarter. And then she gives me,
Yours fluctuates.
yes,
Well, they all fluctuate, but if you want to come up with a number, I'm just gonna put 2,000 in per every quarter.
Mine has been like 15,000.
You can come in.
Well, I'm just putting in a number to show you what it
Right.
looks like. And so that would be, oh, I left out a zero. That would be cheap. So there's $8,000, depending on what your taxes are. Well, the bottom line to all this is all of these columns are going to add up. And the reason you may want to go ahead and put in your actual numbers every month is so that you can start planning. Well, I know in March I got to have $2,600 in my savings account because I'm gonna be writing checks for that, and go on across and get your monthly nut, so to speak. But here's the important number that we're going to get to and why we're doing this. If you want to do all of these personal ones, help yourself. If you don't want to do your personal ones, that's your business. You may have it someplace else. But when we get this number right here, that tells you what you've got to pay this year to stay in business. Does everybody get that? Are there any questions online? Nope.
Yep.
So most of you are single agents. And you see the next tab over is Gold Solo Agent. Well, that number that we had from business expenses, that populates right there. So when we start figuring out how much you need to do, this is going to populate already what your personal expenses are. Now, if you don't want to, I'm sorry, business expenses. If you don't want to put your personal expenses in here, you don't have to. If you've got a sheet at home that says, I already know what it is, you can type it in there. But keep in mind, this number right here, if you decide to use the same sheet next year, and by the way, I can send you another copy of this. You might name this for this year. When you type a number in here, that's going to erase the formula.
Yes, ma'am.
One of us.
It's not working.
No, no.
Oh, I thought.
No.
Sorry.
Okay, question. Is there, we're here, we're saying this is how much we're going to spend per year, but is there a place where we can put our actual expense? This is what we're budgeting, but is there a place to put actual?
No.
Okay,
This is not in a true budget. You're going to have, this is what I projected. These are my actuals. Lance tracks his actuals to the penny. For our HOA, I track them to the dollar. But what I'm doing here, and let's go back to our goal. This is about you planning what you need to do every day to be able to get your, so don't look at this as a budget per se. I would say all of you should have QuickBooks Online or something like that to track all those expenses, because like Sandra, her accountant can log in and, or well, my accountant can log in and see what my actual expenses were versus my income. You should be doing X, A, B, C, D. That's good business. This is a projection for your business. Think of it that way always. So you'll notice up here, I've got a couple of minor goals. And I said, I want to fix my transmission and take my grandkids to Worlds of Fun. And you all told me I was smoking crack if I was going to get my grandchildren, 8 of them, to Worlds of Fun for $10,000. I promise you Disneyland would be 3-4 times that. But let's say this year I don't want to take them there. However, I want to go back to Hawaii, which I'm not doing this year, by the way. Now, For me, Hawaii, I use miles to fly over and back. I have deals that I get on this, that, and rentals. So I'm going to say it's going to be $5,000. And again, that's a rough number. That's not this is the end all. So I've got right now, I want to fix my transmission because I didn't get to it last year. I've got these down here comes from up here. I have my personal expenses. Well, I'm not going to put those in here. There's two ways I can get rid of it. I can get rid of it here, or I can go back to the budget and make this number 0. Okay? But I'm just going to go right here, and I'm going to not track my personal expenses. Huh? Oh, well, there's this back button in. Undo. Delete.
Okay, I thought the spreadsheet you were just on was your business expenses, but that was your personal expenses?
Well, over here on my budget, I have my business expenses at the top
Oh, gotcha.
and down at the bottom,
Okay,
personal
sorry,
expenses.
sorry.
So if I want to put in my haircuts and my insurance,
Gotcha.
my house payments, all that stuff, I can. But again, this isn't a budget per se. This is a projection. So I'll know how much I need to do every day to make my dollars.
Understand.
So let's go back to my goals for a second. So up in here, I've got my personal goal. This year I want to earn, well, I need the $9,000 from above. I need to get my business expenses covered. And this number, additional profit desired. Well, most of you aren't in business just to break even. We may end up that way, but that's not necessarily why we're here, okay? So how much money do you want to make above and beyond covering your expenses? Well, I put 30 grand in there just to have a round number. And you'll see that then my personal goal, my business expenses, and how much extra I want to make runs into $62,319. And that's what I need my real estate to end up with after I pay my expenses and stuff, what I end up with. Is there any questions about that, online or otherwise? Okay.
But you don't have any personal expenses, so you're living in your car, I guess,
Well,
and you're not getting your haircut.
again, if you, as I say, if you've got QuickBooks Online or whatever, and you know that with house payments and with whatever you do, you know, car payments and so on, that's another $75,000 in the year. Well, then I need to make 137. Now you can go down and say, well, I can fill out this other sheet, or I can say, here's my house payment, my car payment, look back on QuickBooks as my average grocery bill, so on, and add it up one time and put it in there. There's no reason for you to fill out that other sheet. You follow me? Now, maybe I look at all that and I say, wow, with all that, I'm not going to make, you know, an extra 30,000. So I'm going to take that down to 10. And that gets me vacation and whatnot, my taxes, and so I'm fine. This is something you have to decide what it's going to be for you. So now let's go back. Are there any other questions about this at the moment? The next thing we're going to do is we have to figure out how you make money with real estate sales. And I'm going to show you where we find some of these numbers that will help that. But there's one number in here that's going to be hard for you guys to find. Now, you may be able to find it in Better KS. You may be able to ask Tracy or I to look it up for you. But here's the company average. Tracy says she doesn't know how. There are, most of you charge or try to charge 3% when you're doing a transaction. You may do 3% on the buyer side. You may charge 4% for both sides because discounts and what your services are worth are all up to you. But as a company average, our number is 2.8%. If you don't want to go and add up all of your commissions and try to figure it out, you can use company average and be close. And again, what's the purpose of this? Say it in unison.
Projection.
So you know what you need to do. So I'm going to put 2.9 in here. Now the rest of it, I don't want to use company averages on purpose because you guys have your own set that you ought to be using. So I'm going to go into Paragon. Everybody can see Paragon online. What we want to do is figure out what you did last year. And Sandra gave me permission to use hers stats. So if you go into search and under specialty searches, you see inventory, specialty searches, inventory, and click on it. Mine looks slightly different because I can look up everybody in the company's listings. You only can look up your own. I'm going to get rid of all my actives and all that other stuff. And you'll notice that Greg's numbers are always 0. And I'm going to put in sold. And I want to get all sold because sometimes you could have others enter office before input. I don't want any of that. I want all my solds. Then I'm going to suggest you do 12 months year to date. The reason is we're doing this in October. You've got November and December going forward. October and November. However, statistically, October, November, December generally run at about the same percentages throughout decades. So I suggest you come in here and put in closing date and start with October 5th, 22 to current, or you can put the date in. Now, the reason it says 0 is, guess what? Greggy hasn't sold anything in a year. There's one other thing I need you to pay attention to. There is this box that says listed or sold. If you don't click on it and get listed or sold, you're only going to pull up the listed or the sold, but not the ones you had both sides on. So get listed or sold. And then the extra step I have to take is name the agent. So I'm going to put in Sandra. And it populates. And then you'll see that Sandra sold 28 units last year. Now, I'm not as involved in the units right now as I am wanting to look at the averages. And so this entire thing that we've done up to now is to go to the next page. So out of all these units, you'll see that Sandra's average sold price is $248,730. Well, that's important to me because I need to put that number in here, 248,730. Because let's say that I sold 40 houses last year, but they were all flips and all below 150,000. You need your average because that's the market you play in. Does that make sense to everybody? For example, if I was in new homes only like Sherry Proctor, her averages are going to be a lot higher because it costs more to build new homes. So her numbers would be affected by that. Michelle and Esther do some flips. That's going to change their average. So that's why you're looking up your average. Any questions about that? Trying to go real slow to make sure we get this all covered. Okay, I'm going to use 2.8%, which I told you is company average. if Sandra wants to do the work to figure out her average, her actual average, she can. But if you don't want to do the work, or you don't ask us, or you don't find it, that number will be close enough to what you need to do for these kind of projections. So what this has now done is it's taken my average sales price. It has taken the 2.8% that I get, and it has said the gross commission income or the average commission per side is 6,964. Now, enter your percentage take home after commission split. So Mike, let's say, and I'm going to use 75% just as a number. Let's say you're split because we're all going to 80 eventually. And I'm not worried anything about when you cap or anything else, because again, this is a projection of what you need to do every day. If you do more every day and you make more because you cap, yay, and it's more is good. So if we put 75% or 80 or whatever, it's 70, whatever you want to put in there, it's going to tell you that your average that you get to take at the end of the year is $5,223. And so based on this number up here, I said I needed to make for my personal goals, my business expenses, my home expenses, and having some additional profit. I need to have 23 transactions in a year in order to make the money that I said I wanted to make. Does everybody understand that?
Yep.
It is easy, but when you cover it real fast in one class, you get confused really quick. Okay, so if you understand now how we got this number of transactions, I'm going to give it one more time. Any more questions on the number of transactions? Well, then the next thing we want to figure out is, of my transactions, how many were listings and how many were buyers? Now, I'm going to tell you, for me, the goal in this business is to do 50-50. The reality is probably not that, depending on how long you've been in the business, how well you farm listings, your experience in listings versus buyers, because frankly, buyers are easier to acquire. They're not easier to get a contract done. As Tulio well knows, you can write 6, 7, 8 contracts, and I'm sure others of you have as well, and not get it done. So what I'm going to suggest is to come back over here. And the easy way to do this, we know that she sold 28 last year. I want to find out how many of these were her sales and how many were buyer sales. So if I come down over here and click on listing agent, it's going to put everybody in order. And all I have to do is count how many say Sandra Fuller. And Sandra is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 of her 28 were listings. No questions about how I got that number, right? 13 of 28 of her listings. Now, Sandra is a little more complex because she also co-ops with Lance sometimes. So that would be more of a team involvement, or they have to decide how they're doing things. But for the purposes of just straightforward single agent, we have 13 listings out of 28 sales. So you pull up your trusty little calculator, and this is going to be real easy. 13, the number she did, divided by the total number of sales equals 0.46. For those who don't know, that 0.46 means 46%.
Mhm.
So now I'm gonna come over here, back to my page, get rid of my calculator. Come on, calculator, where you at? I'm gonna come back over here and I'm gonna go, well, my listings were 46%. And then I need to make this equal to 100.
Oh,
So it's not 50%, it'd be 64.
54.
Everybody see how I got that?
54. New math.
It says 64,
No.
No,
54.
54, yeah.
See, I'm good at math. That's why I use calculators. And we did all of that work so far. So I could say, I need to have 11 closings and listings and 13 buyers to close. Now you have to decide how you're going to focus your business starting to go forward from here. You could say, no, I want to have more listings and that's what I'm going to concentrate on this year. And to get more listings, I'm going to set up everybody in my CRM on the neighborhood news so they get this little thing going out. Or you could say every month I'm going to send to people that I sold homes to XYZ. Or I'm going to call every month people who already own homes that I sold to them. I'm not going to call buyers. You have to decide that if you want to shift these numbers. But just based on what Sandra did last year, and we could go back and pull up multiple years for Sandra, this is probably statistically pretty sound. She needs 11 and 13. Pendings to close rate. Now this number you have to make up on your own, or you have to go back and look. So Tulio wrote 6 contracts for a client, pretending. But only one of those contracts went to pending. That's not the number of contracts he wrote. That's the one that went to pending. If you look at all of your pending contracts last year, and you had 30 of them, how many of them didn't close? Now, you can go in your brain. Well, I remember John Smith and April and Kenya. Those are 3 that fell apart before we closed. But then I sold them new houses. Well, that's still your pending ratio. But I would say, just to be safe, you can use these numbers, which are from Realogy 2018. They looked at all the real estate agents across the United States and said 87.9% of our contracts didn't close on the listing side and 88.9% on the buyer side. Or you can make up your own numbers and put 90 in there, whatever you want it to be. But here's what these numbers reveal. If I need 11 closings, I got to write 13 contracts that go to pending.
Mhm.
If I want 13 closings here, I need to write 15 that go to pending. The next one, active clients, listing or buyer to pending. So let's go back to Tulio and all of you guys. You know, you've been writing a lot more contracts this year for buyers that aren't closing, don't you? But I'm guessing if you got a listing, once it goes to pending, you fight real hard to keep it in play, don't you? So for me, if I've got a listing, I've got about a 95% chance it's going to close. For buyers, I'm writing a lot more contracts that aren't going to close. So I'm going to put this down to 65%. And that changes the numbers as we go. So if these are accurate, and again, this is projection, so you'll know what you do every day to make money. Then I've got to have 14 listings to get 11 listing closings. I've got to have 24 buyers to get 13 closings. Now, that could be a little skewed because, back to Tulio, my buddy, He's written 6 contracts, but these buyers haven't gone anywhere else. They're still with him. It's just that he's got to spend more time driving them around and write more contracts. But let's say he needs 24 buyers to actually get them to contract. Then this number is the next one that is really hard to gauge. Some of you may be killer queens in your listing presentation. If you get in the living room, you've got the listing. Some of you may say, I seem to go out and be up against, like Lynn told me she was up against, I can't think of the agent right now, but who?
Bill.
Bill Graham. And she was losing to Bill all the time. So she may say, I only get 60% of the listings that I go out on appointment for. But still, these are the numbers from NAR from 2017 that says if I make a listing presentation, 85% of the time I got it. And if I make a buyer presentation, 83% of the time I got it. Now that's okay because you're retaining them. But I might skew that a little bit too, because how many of you have worked with your buyers that you've written 6 contracts for and they end up going to a different agent because you couldn't get it accepted? You follow the logic in all this. Okay. So then we end up with 17 appointments to get the number of listings I need and 29 buyer appointments to get the number of buyer contracts I need. Am I boring you to tears?
Only a little bit.
No.
Now, this is some stuff I want you to start looking at. But for next week, I would like you guys to have filled up your budget of your business expenses, personal expenses if you want them, and start looking at the numbers of the MLS so that we can get down to how many daily contacts do I need to make the appointments I need to get these closings done. Damn it. Okay, there. And the reason, and I'm going to shoot forward just a second, because when we're done with these, we're putting together a picture of, if you want to go this far, am I going to go from prior year? Am I going to do mailing? What my conversion rate is? We're going to get down to a monthly breakdown that says in January, 4.8% of the closings happen. Based on that, I need close to 2 closings in January, February, and March. And it looks like it's pretty average all the way through there. It can shift around, but you also see that your daily appointments shift based on your closings. And we're going to get to the final page, which is where we'll be on the 3rd week. What do I need to do every day with the 168 hours I have to work? Because there are 168 hours in a week, including your sleep time. Some of you don't plan that part, you know? So ultimately, where we're going with all of this is not to say this is my full budget for everything I want to do, but what I need to do every day with my hours to help me get to where I want to be at the end of the year. So goal for next week, have your budget business expenses, personal if you want, and then goal single agent, have it filled out from the, I'm trying to get up to the top, from whatever you want to achieve, your expenses, your average sales, and split it up between listings and buyers. Can everybody do that? Okie dokie. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to see we still have people on the call.
That's helpful.
Yeah. And I want to give you time now. Do you have any questions, or did I cover it a little bit better this year than last year? Baby steps are a little better.
Well, I think every time you go over it, it's something else resonates within somebody's brain like mine. And like, oh, yeah, that's why I wanted to do that. Because it's a great tool.
Well, and every time I teach it, it goes in my brain a little better too. So, you know, I mean, but let me explain just one quickly. People like Lynn, and I'm using you because you brought this up. Lynn wants to keep a daily accountability sheet on her desk that says, today I made my 10 phone calls and I emailed 5 people and I sent out 3 personal handwritten notes. So she knows what she's got to do every day. I don't know how many people Tulio calls every day, but he doesn't need an accountability sheet because he already does some of this. It's become a habit, but he might look at it and say, wow, I didn't realize that I'm actually making all these calls, but I'm still 2 listings short of my goal. I need to call 2 more people every day. I need to make sure I've done this. What steps are you going to do on a daily basis to take you where you want to go? That's what this is all about. Tulio may look at it and say, I'm doing everything I've done. Thank you for the exercise. Lynn's going to make an accountability sheet. Some of you are going to say, I only need 2 sales a month. I can do that. I'm already doing that. And then in your brain, you're going to keep track of it. But this is all about how do I break it down? So, you know, it's real easy in March to say, I didn't get 2 sales in January, so I'm already 6 sales behind. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, you can take actions, but you can also see that in January, that's the worst month to close things. So you got to pick up 1 in March and 1 in June, and then you've got it done. That's what we're trying to get to. Okay. I'm going to stop recording.